Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I was lucky enough to chat with YouTube star Max Miller. You can go check out Max's YouTube channel, Tasting History, right now, and I would highly recommend that you do. Just pause this, go watch an episode, come back, because it's a really fun show that explains not only ancient recipes from history, but the actual history behind them as well. While I am not much of a home chef, I am a giant history nerd, and so I really loved the channel and was excited to get to talk to Max. It's a fun interview, and I think you'll enjoy.
Hi, Les.
Hey, Max. Thanks so much for making time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
I was just sitting here learning all about Saturnalia and human sacrifice and cheesecake balls and whatnot. Everybody's had to find their YouTube, Wikipedia rabbit hole to go hide down this past year for various bits of time.
I know.
And I find it funny for myself that I have watched so much cooking shows, even tangential ones like Tiny Chef, just because my relationship with food is frequently to look down at my stomach every few hours and go, didn't we just do this? Why are you hungry again? And
Welcome to my life.
but I have often said that I feel like curiosity is really the key to life, and anything sufficiently nerded out about is interesting for at least like one sitting. So I am fascinated. I think your intro nailed it perfectly. I like food. I love history.
Awesome.
And so I was absolutely thrilled when I didn't know about your channel until the opportunity to interview you. But in researching, I loved getting to kind of go down this rabbit hole. Can you talk a little bit about what brought you not just to a cooking show, which the recipes are also well explained, but also a history show?
Yeah. So it all kind of started with, I've always loved history. It's always been a passion since I was a little kid. But it all kind of started with the Great British Bake Off. 6 years ago, because I didn't cook at all before watching that show, but I became so obsessed with the show that I made everything that they made. So basically taught myself how to bake from watching the show. And on the show, they used to have these little historical segments talking about the history of whatever they were baking. Sadly, they've gotten rid of those. But so I started, when I would make things, I would bring them into work and talk to people about, the history of this medieval cheesecake and the time period and everything. And they either really enjoyed it or just wanted me to have a different outlet to talk. But somebody said, you should put this on YouTube. And that was last Christmas, or Christmas 2019, I guess. And so I thought, all right, maybe I will. And it just happened that, I got furloughed from my job. So I was really able to double down and put out an episode every week. But that's how it started.
Did you have a particular look to your cooking show or mental image of how this thing was going to come together for you? I know I'm old enough to still picture Emerald basically as the format for all cooking shows, with just magically appearing little perfectly cut dishes already set up for him, a whole second baked lasagna in the oven. Did you have a mental image?
That was my view as well. Like, that's what I wanted. What I was picturing was very much a kind of, think of those PBS shows from the 80s, like the Frugal Gourmet or Yan Can Cook.
Yes.
Those kinds of things. So yeah, no, totally. I was going to be behind my counter and, talking as I cooked and kind of filtering in history, peppering it in as I went along. Well, turns out, one, cooking and talking at the same time, incredibly difficult.
I can't imagine trying to
Incredibly.
time the beats of a script and I mean, I can't time the recipe anyway.
Yeah, it's so hard, and especially when you don't have, there's nobody behind the camera, there's nobody doing lights and sound and everything. I'm doing all of that, so there are just too many things to think of. The other restrictive thing is my kitchen is tiny, and so it doesn't lend itself to even have me and the camera in there at the same time, let alone far enough back that it's getting me. And I don't have like a counter where I can put the camera on the other side. So there went that idea. If you watch the very first episode, I do try to do it all in the kitchen. And it just didn't work. It just felt way too cramped because it is. So the next episode, I said, you know what? We're going to break the two sections apart. I'm going to do cooking and then the history. And so I said, I think back to, I would spend hours listening to my grandfather tell stories of, he grew up on a farm during the Depression. He was in World War II. He had all of these great stories from when he was young, and I just loved them. So that was my first kind of introduction to history, was his history as told in a story format. And where we would do it was at his kitchen table. We would play cards, and he would just talk about his life. And I loved that. So I was like, that's kind of what I want to emulate. We're just sitting down at the kitchen table, talking about food, talking about history. And so visually, you see me cooking, obviously in the kitchen, but everything else is just me sitting at the table talking.
I really loved how that balance worked out, at least on like the Saturnalia one, for instance. It really feels like that moment when you're having coffee or a glass of wine or whatever while your friend is cooking something or your partner's cooking something, and there's going to be that downtime where you'd wash some dishes or get some things cleaned, but it's in the oven. You're not leaving. It's going to be out in 30 minutes, but or you're frying something, or got to touch it a little bit every once in a while, but you're not engaged, and you can sit at the counter and jaw. And that's what it felt like a perfect time to drop the history lesson to me.
Great. That's kind of what I'm going for. I don't always hit it, but that's what I'm going for.
I ended up in a weird conversation a year ago with a friend of mine because I, for some reason, looked up what cream of tartar is and where that came from. And we just had this discussion of who was the person that misstored wine and then went, hey, that powdered crap on the inside of the bottle, I bet I could scrape that down and you can make eggs with it and I'll clean the floor. Like who in the history, we kind of decided that the entire history of cooking just had to be one mad scientist torturing their family over and over with like, I think it's food, try it. And we're just fascinated by these weird histories. Has there been a just strangest one you found so far that really caught your eye on like, what is that and why did people eat it?
I mean, there are lots. Two actually that really stand out. One, anything fermented. I did an episode on garum, which is fermented fish sauce. It's fish that is set out in the sun with salt for several months. But whether it's that or fermented cabbage like kimchi or anything like that, it does not smell good. It does. You look at it and you smell it and you think, this will poison me. So who was the person who said, but I'm going to try it anyway?
Yeah, what are the circumstances
the flavor
there?
is exactly. How hungry do you have to be? And then the other one is, and nobody knows the answer to this, and I wish that someday somebody finds a treatise on it, but who was the first person to dip a pretzel in caustic lye, which can burn your hands and will kill you if you eat it, and then take it out, put it in the oven, and try that out? I mean, if you cook it, then it basically it nullifies the deadly aspects of lye. But who was the first person to even think, maybe I'll dip this in some diluted lye and see how that turns out? And it was probably an accident. They had been washing clothes in a big pot or something with lye, and then the water some of the water was still in there and had a little bit of lye, and they ended up boiling some bread in there, and it turned out dark brown and shiny. And they were like, "Whoa, what happened?"
Yeah.
But that's still,
Yeah, I mean,
that's a brave person.
I get a little nervous about poorly made handmade soap. Like, no, did
Yes.
everything saponificate, or is that just going to be a bar of lye in my shower?
Yeah.
Like, I can definitely, no, it's fine. Try it, eat it.
It's burning just a little bit. Yeah.
I think that's just great. Stuff like that just absolutely fascinates me. It's part of what my friends, I'm sure, are going to laugh about my excitement about this show, because I am frequently the one that just has no interest in cooking. I feel like you were not having not boiled an egg, but watching British Bake Off and going, this is super interesting.
It's true. It's true.
And for some reason, I've got like one recipe I make, but but there's a separate, beyond having learned to cook, gone in and learned the history of these things, written out these scripts. There's an entire social media management side of hitting 500,000. Is it 500,000 subscribers that you just?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is to me, that looks like a full-time job in and of itself.
Yeah.
Like in terms of not having somebody to manage the lights for you or manage the sound for you. Have there been specific steps that you realized you had to take, or great advice you got as you were pushing towards this?
Yeah, I got a lot of advice from, it wasn't personalized advice, but simply advice from watching other YouTubers. And, a lot of it is that first few hours on YouTube, when you post a video, you really need to be there, because that's when your most ardent fans are watching and commenting, and you have an opportunity to actually talk with them in the comments. And it's really, really important. But at a certain point, you have to stop. Otherwise, you won't make new videos. You'll just be responding to comments. It wasn't a problem for my first few videos. My mom would write, "Good job." That's about it. But when Garum, that was the first video to really take off. It took me from 6,000 subscribers to 150,000 in about a week. So I was getting so many comments, not only on YouTube, but Twitter and Instagram, that I spent 2 weeks, probably 8 hours a day, responding to comments. It was a full-time job. And I realized that you can't do that. It's just not doable. But with Instagram and Twitter, it's easier to be a little bit more active and engaged on those platforms, I guess. So I do try to answer everyone who writes me on either of those platforms. I usually respond. Anyone who emails, I usually respond. But there's a balance that has to be made, where it's like, all right, I've been doing this for 2 hours. I need to not do this for a little while. Luckily, while I don't have the help with most of the production or anything, I have an incredibly helpful fiance who actually really enjoys social media. It's not something that I enjoy as much as he does. So he will often not necessarily respond, but he'll kind of go through and curate. He's like, this one needs response. This one needs response. Look at these and stuff like that. So he's been very, very helpful in that. It's something that we can do at night while we watch TV.
That's wonderful. I was going to ask it. It almost crosses into the same personal self-care that all of us have had to do this year with managing your digital time and such. Yeah. But you've also inadvertently folded in a full-time job to it. Right. My partner is also much more comfortable with social media and sees a value to it that I don't always. And so I frequently have to lean on them to like help me put an argument down, because I won't leave it alone, or I'll be like, no, I need to look away from this, and just, no, take your phone away. We're breaking up with your phone right now. Come on.
Well, that's a whole, so like you said, putting an argument away. So 99% of my social media and comments and everything are incredibly positive. But once in a while, you get the less than positive things. And Jose, my fiance, has been very good at not letting me even respond. He's like, no, don't, just move past it. It will just upset you and keep you up all night. You can't win this. So he's been really good about that as well, keeping me because I actually love debate and stuff. So I love engaging in that. But sometimes on social media, what you see as a lively debate reads as defensive, and it when you're reading it rather than listening to it, it can take on a whole different tone. And so I found it's just best to take a breath and let it go.
Yeah. That's great to have a troll filter essentially to help you not feed the haters there.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me about it. I do want to ask, do you have a favorite episode that you'd recommend everybody go check out first?
Yeah, I mean, I think Garum is a great place to start. It's kind of got everything that's great in the channel, I find, is in that episode. Well,
I've really enjoyed it so far, which astonished me because I so don't enjoy cooking.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Your presentation, I feel like, is on point. For someone that honestly breaks out in a cold sweat watching any kind of cooking thing, even if I start to feel like I think I could cook that, and then I get the ingredients home and go, nope. And and even I feel fairly comfortable watching there. It's clearly presented, and then, like I said, the history lesson just feels like hanging out. It's just a really fun show. Thanks so much for chatting with me about it today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Have a good one.
TV Dudes is an independently run podcast out of Austin, Texas. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/tvdudes.
You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is done by our friend and original TV Dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith.
To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com. I'm Randy Lander.
I'm Les Weiler.
And I'm Kyle Scott.
Thanks for listening.